Good morning and welcome to the September 19th Victim Compensation Board meeting. For those of you in the room that are appearing on a specific agenda item or wish to offer public comment, the microphones at the podium and tables are directional and require that you hold them fairly close to your mouth when speaking to ensure your testimony is captured. Good morning and welcome to the September 19th Victim Compensation Board meeting who are appearing via Zoom. For those of you in the room that are the presenter, please use the comment feature to note that as staff are monitoring the comments in real time. Council, would you please call the roll?
Member Becton.
Present.
Here.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Thank you. Good morning. Item 1 is going to be the approval of the minutes for the July 18th, 2024 board meeting.
Are there any discussion, additions, or corrections to the minutes from board members? Do I have a motion on item 1?
I move of the July 18th, 2024 minutes.
And I'll second.
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom? Seeing none.
Council, please call the roll.
Motion for consideration is approval of the July 18th, 2024 meeting minutes. Member Becton.
Aye.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As any items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take any action on these matters at this hearing. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding items 4 through 7, there will be a separate call for public comment when each item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this meeting, we will be calling on you by name or phone number. For those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it is your turn to speak.
Thank you. I see Mr. Tenoyan has his hand raised.
Good morning to the board. Good morning to fellow advocates and victims and staff. This is Jovannes Tenoyan. I'm a Burbank resident, and I'm also running for Burbank City Council this upcoming election. I commented to the board back in May with an introduction and just some criticisms for the board about some improvements they can make. And I wanted to say thank you that one of the improvements were made with now ongoing litigations being put on the board agenda. I think that's very important as a member of the public to see how the board is spending its money, what kind of litigation directions are they taking, and what kind of actions are being done that are resulting in these issues. I myself am a victim of crime, and I actually have been working on my own claim throughout this entire year. And I filed that back in December, end of last year. And throughout this entire year has been just one big kind of whirlwind of working with staff and trying to get connected with our local law enforcement, trying to get connected with the local district attorney's office. There's a hearing set for December 16 for this year, but I'm not sure if we're all going to be able to make that considering the different schedules and issues going on. So I just wanted to raise all these different kind of concerns. And I know that there are many in the community who feel the same way that I feel. They might not be here right now to make these public comments, whether they're in person or over Zoom, but I do want to share my concerns because I know there are many who have been through what I've been through. And I don't think that any kind of crime victim or any claimant should be put through this kind of stress and burden just to be able to get the care and the wellness resources that they need. And I think that if someone who has a Berkeley education, if someone who's working full time and constantly being a part of their community, if they're being put through this kind of difficulty, then I really do truly fear about the state of this agency. I fear about its leadership and what's being done with all this money and all this power that this agency has. And I just want to put that out there. So please, please, please don't forget about victims. Please listen to advocates who come here and show up and fight on behalf of victims. And please know that the political arena, it's not set in stone. It's not static. We are all part of our communities. We all play a part in our own ways. And if we spend a lot of time kind of ignoring our constituents, then constituents and other representatives will step up and they might end up taking the places that we all stand in today if we're not doing our jobs. So thank you so much. Thank you again so much for fighting for crime victims. And I really do hope that my concerns and the concerns of others in the community are heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenoyan, for sharing your concerns. Ms. Petros.
Good morning, Chair Ravel, Members Beckton, and Member Johnson. My name is Margaret Petros. I'm a victim advocate and the executive director with the nonprofit Mothers Against Murder. My public comment is related to the closed session part of the agenda, specifically the discussion you'll be having on our writ of mandate, Mothers Against Murder versus California Victim Compensation. Last month, on August 5th, Superior Court Judge Roush issued his ruling to grant our writ to mandate you to follow California Government Code Section 13959 to give all applicants who contest the denial of their victim compensation an opportunity to appear in person at the hearing if they wish. The judge declared you are wrong in making a final denial decision based and restricted to written records and file. There is no way around this right that crime victims have. There has never been a lawful way around this right, but you have gone around it for at least the past 12 years. And you refused to listen when I brought this serious violation to your attention. Now, on information and belief, you don't want to listen to the judge's ruling either and have plans to appeal this court's decision. While you are in a closed session part of this meeting, please think twice about wasting public funds and public resources to appeal this solid writ order. As is, this unlawful practice has done damage to thousands of victims. Appealing this ruling will continue the damage to many more victims. Your duty is to help crime victims, not violate them. If you choose to appeal this court order, you will be abusing your powers and the trust that you have been given by the state of California. It's easier, it is smarter, and it is much better to accept the court's ruling so we can all start doing right by California's crime victims. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petros. I appreciate your perspective. I obviously can't comment on pending litigation decisions or anything like that, but I will note that the board is implementing the judge's order in that case. I see Mr. Taylor has his hand up.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Taylor, and I am a California credentialed teacher. I have been since 2004. I have worked at Santa Rita Jail as a teacher for just as long as I've been credentialed. I was victimized by a deputy sheriff. I applied to your program in 2022. And after waiting about 6 months, give or take, I received a denial based solely on the absence of a report by law enforcement. Essentially, law enforcement refused to cooperate with documentation that was requested by your program. I requested my case file after receiving a denial, and I was surprised just how much as I, as a victim, was investigated by your program. However, the deputy who harmed me was not investigated by your program. If that deputy sheriff would have been investigated by the program, by Cal VCB, it would have been discovered that that deputy has multiple pending cases. There's a list of other women who have been victimized by that deputy sheriff, in the victims of the past and victims currently. And had that deputy been investigated, there would have been a record of workplace sexual harassment complaints against that deputy sheriff who victimized me. So I am here today to ask the board to reconsider how it navigates applications of victims who have been harmed by law enforcement, especially when there, when there are known biases and there is a knowledge that members of law enforcement tend to stick together. And specifically in my case, there are members of law enforcement who deliberately destroy and cover up evidence of misconduct by their own personnel. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Taylor, and I want to express my real sympathy for the hardships you've experienced. I'm sorry. If we have no further public comment, we can move to item 3.
Thank you. Item 3 is the Executive Officer's Statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Good morning, members of the board. So I have numerous updates to give you today. I want to run through them. First, I want to let you know about a small update for the forced or involuntary sterilization program, which I know you've heard quite a bit about over the last couple of years. The legislature passed AB 179, a budget trailer bill, which we do anticipate the governor will sign, but he has not yet. This bill allows individuals who applied to the program, the FIST program, to request an additional review by the board no later than January 1st, 2025. It requires Cal VCB to do an additional review of previously denied claims or appeals upon request by the claimant with a showing of good cause. And provided that the claimant is found to be a qualified recipient, they will receive the $35,000 in compensation that was part of that program. Once this bill is enacted, Cal VCB will be updating our website to reflect this change. You may recall earlier this year, I told you about possible changes to federal regulations that govern Cal VCB and every state victim compensation program. In August, I attended the federal VOTA conference, which is required by our federal grant. And there, the federal director of the Office of Victims of Crime, Christina Rose, shared that the federal government is planning to release the revised federal regulations sometime this winter. They will be effective immediately upon publication, but there will be a process in place to allow states to request a exemption while they enact appropriate state statutory and regulatory changes. We do believe that we will need to make statutory and regulatory changes based on the draft of the new regulations that we have seen. We also anticipate that the changes will require more funds to pay newly eligible victims. We will, of course, keep the board updated as when these regulations are released and to let you know exactly what they will say. The director also shared concerns regarding the Federal Crime Victims Fund. Due to ongoing litigation, the director is concerned that deposits to the fund are at risk. Significant deposits into the Crime Victims Fund, much as $1.5 billion, are on hold and being held because of pending litigation. And so clearly this could have an impact on VOTA funds that are distributed to states, both on the assistance and compensation side. We've already seen those impacts on the assistance side. The compensation side could potentially also be impacted if these deposits aren't released through the litigation. We think that that could happen as early as next federal fiscal year. The VOTA fund is been a topic of ongoing conversations at the federal level because of the concern about the stability of the fund. And this is something that we keep our eyes on because it could impact Cal VCB. Aside from that, it was a good opportunity at the conference to connect with fellow victim compensation leaders in different states, and really gave me some good ideas of outreach and other types of activities that we can do here in California to improve our services for victims. I also wanted to provide you some information about the Trauma Recovery Center grant program. As you all know, Prop 47, which passed in 2014, established the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Fund, which is a significant source of funding for the TRC grant program. In fiscal year 23-24, the TRC funding included $8.3 million from the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Fund out of the total of $12.5 million. So it was 67% of the money that we were able to provide to TRCs. As I'm sure you're aware, Prop 36 is on the ballot in November and aims to undo some of the changes put into place by Prop 47. If it is passed, and a poll that was released today shows that it's passing by a very large margin at this point, we do believe it would reduce the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Fund. It's hard to estimate by how much. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimates the total reduction to be in the low tens of millions. This would result in a proportional reduction in low millions to the TRC program. We received 10% distribution from the fund. Some other groups have estimated that the reduction could be much higher. So we will continue to monitor this. We think that it would not necessarily have an impact for this upcoming TRC year, but certainly for the following one. However, I will note that the TRC is only guaranteed $2 million from the restitution fund, and this amount really can only support 1 or 2 TRCs. And we want the board to be aware as we approach our next funding cycle about the diminished funds. There were 15 TRCs who were approved in the 2023 grant cycle who could reapply this year. We probably estimate about $7.5 million less in the general fund money compared to that year. So we think that it will be unlikely that there will be sufficient money in the TRC funds to fund all 15 of those TRCs. We plan to post the NOFA in December. We hold informational session with potential applicants and walk through the process. We always have a question and answer period for trauma recovery centers and both existing and potential trauma recovery centers. And as always, we work with them to make sure that they know that they're, the potential for a lack of funds, and, we always encourage TRCs to look for additional funding sources beyond CalVCB. But again, I just wanted to make sure you were all aware of that early in the process, so that you understand when we get to that point. I also wanted to let the board know that earlier this summer, as part of a security evaluation, we identified that there were still advocates who had access to CalVCB system of record called CARES, even though we had moved the advocates to their own advocate portal several years ago. So we've been working diligently over the summer with the advocate community and fully have transitioned all advocates to the advocate portal and out of the CARES system. We notified them on that as of August 1st, they no longer have access to the CARES system. We've done a lot of work, and I want to especially thank our information technology staff and our outreach staff and our customer call center staff, who have all worked really hard together over the last couple of months to make sure that we were able to make a lot of improvements to the advocate portal to help advocates with their work, helping victims of crime. A lot of this work was done in record time, and so really appreciate that we were able to do that. It's been a collaborative effort with the advocate community, and we're very pleased with where we ended up on that. Finally, I'm proud to share our fiscal year 2023 annual report, which is in your binders. The report highlights the great work the CalVCB team did that year, expanding outreach and assisting victims. We received over 40,000 applications, which is 1,500 more than the prior year and the highest number since the start of the pandemic. We took steps to eliminate barriers for victims, process improvements, regulatory changes, and the new awareness campaign that we launched is already driving up applications and website traffic. So we expect that trend will continue. The full report and the supplemental statistics are in your binder. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that or anything else I've discussed.
Thank you, Executive Officer Gledhill. Are there any questions or comments on the Executive Officer's report?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Just first off, thanks for the excellent report. Appreciate that and all the great work you all have done in the past year. I wanted to go back just to ask a question about the TRCs and the funding. Obviously, there's sort of a roller coaster situation with the funding on the TRCs, and I'm wondering, from Cal VCB's perspective, is there an opportunity, or is there anything that Cal VCB can do to help ameliorate that, or further provide support to TRCs and looking for other funding, sort of a companion funding, et cetera? Just wondering, if there are any sort of ideas on the table for trying to stabilize that funding.
So I think I know that the TRCs themselves have a lot of conversations with each other, and UCSF is a leader in that in terms of talking to TRCs and having them discuss with one another. Whether or not there are other funding sources, I really think that's probably on them to try to explore. And then of course the other conversation would be had with the legislature and the administration about whether or not they wanted to consider a more stable funding source for this program. And I think that is one of those ongoing questions that I don't know if the budget fiscal outlook for the state will support this year.
We will move to item 4, which is a legislative update, and it will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Katie Gardinas.
Good morning. The legislature concluded its session at the end of August. In addition to the budget trailer bill for the forced and involuntary sterilization program that Executive Officer Gledhill discussed, one other key bill remains on the governor's desk. AB 1186 by Assemblymember Bonta would provide that restitution fines against both adult and juvenile offenders would be deemed uncollectible 10 years after imposition. It would also remove authority for the imposition of certain mandatory restitution fines against juvenile offenders. Several other bills were on the floor have also moved to the governor's desk. These include SB 1481 by Senator Caballero, AB 2432 by Assemblymember Gabriel, AB 1832 by Assemblymember Rubio, and AB 2020 by Assemblymember Bonta. The governor has until September 30th to sign or veto bills. Those are the highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Deputy Cardenas. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Thank you. Item 5 is the contract update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Sean Ramirez.
Good morning, board members. Today's contract report is another quick report as it's informational. The items contained in the report are with the joint power agreements, the awarded trauma recovery center agreements, as well as standard operating contracts. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Deputy Ramirez. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom? Thank you. Item 6 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Stephen Patterson, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
On July 3rd, 2024, Stephen Patterson filed an application with the Victim Compensation Board as an erroneously convicted felon. That application was supplemented on July 11th of 2024. The application is based on his 2007 conviction for first-degree murder, which convictions were vacated in March of 2024 pursuant to a grant of habeas corpus. Also in March of 2024, the court granted the motion for a finding of factual innocence pursuant to Penal Code Section 1485.55. As mandated by the court order and pursuant to that same Penal Code section, the proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $919,380, which represents $140 per day for each of the 6,567 days Mr. Patterson was wrongfully imprisoned. Throughout these proceedings, Mr. Patterson has been represented by Attorney Jasmine Harris of the Innocence Center, and the Office of the Attorney General is represented by Deputy Attorney General Catherine Althizer.
Thank you, Counsel. We will hear first from Ms. Harris.
Good morning, board and staff. It's nice to see you all. I will keep my comments brief. I just want to say how much I appreciate the board and staff recognizing how imperative it is for us to compensate the wrongfully convicted. Also appreciate as we change and amend the laws along the way, how helpful you are in adhering to those laws and collaborating with all of us who do the work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Mr. Patterson?
It's nice to meet all of you. I'm going to be real brief. It's really emotional for me. Oftentimes we displace anger and we point it at the wrong people. And I want to apologize to you today because I thought everyone was the same. I thought because this was the government that done this to me, because this was the law system that done this to me, although I'm a firm believer in the law system, I thought that I would get nothing other than to be freed. So even though some people may not think that I owe you, I thank you. I thank you for everything that you're doing today in this process. And I know that what you guys do is strenuous and it's not easy. For the people who are watching, who have families that are in this situation, it's not going to be easy. Wheels of justice are slow, but they work. Thank you very much, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for appearing and for your testimony. We'll hear now from Ms. Althizer from the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. The Attorney General has no additional comment and asks that the board adopt the proposed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. I want to thank counsel for their advocacy in this case. Is there any discussion on this item by the board? Do I have a motion on item 6?
I move to approve the hearing officer's recommendation.
I second.
Is there any,
Please.
is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom?
Seeing none, counsel, please call the roll.
Motion for consideration is adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Stephen Patterson. Member Becton.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Brandon Gamino, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
Brandon Gamino filed an application as an erroneously convicted felon with the California Victim Compensation Board on May 17th of 2023, which application was supplemented in July of 2023. The application is based on his 2012 convictions for robbery and assault with a semi-automatic firearm. The claim seeks $266,700 for 1,905 days of imprisonment. The Attorney General objected to the claim, arguing the evidence fails to show Mr. Gamino is innocent by a preponderance. As explained in detail in the proposed decision, the claim is recommended for denial as Mr. Gamino has failed to meet his burden of showing by a preponderance of the evidence that he is innocent of the challenged convictions as required by Penal Code Section 4900, subsection A. Throughout these proceedings, Mr. Gamino represented himself. The Office of the Attorney General is represented today by Deputy Attorney General Charity Whitney, and also throughout these proceedings.
Thank you, counsel. I see that Mr. Gamino is not present either in the room or on Zoom. So we will hear from Ms. Whitney from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you to the board and good morning. The Attorney General has no additional comment and asks that the board adopt the proposed decision.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Whitney. Do I have a motion? Excuse me. Is there any discussion of this item by the board? Do I have a motion on item 7?
I move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Brandon Gamino.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom? Seeing none.
Counsel, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Brandon Gamino. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
you, Council. The board will now convene in closed session under Government Code Section 11126 Sub E to discuss pending litigation, and under Sub C3 to discuss numbers 1 through 5 of the Victim Compensation Program. Board is reconvening into open session under Government Code Section 11126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 1 through 5 of the Victim Compensation Program?
I move
Move-
approval of numbers 1 through 5 of the Victim Compensation Program.
And I second.
Council, please call the roll.
Motion for consideration or approval of numbers 1 through 5 of the Victim Compensation Program. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is there any other business that needs to come before the board today? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move the meeting be adjourned.
And I second.
Council, please call the roll.
Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. The next meeting is scheduled to occur on November 21st, 2024. See everyone then.
Thank you. See you in November.